Hey guys, tonight we're venturing into a world where winter doesn't just nip at your nose, it claws at your bones. Imagine the bitter wind slicing through the cracks in your wooden walls, your breath fogging in your own home, and every night feeling like a battle just to see the morning sun. That's the reality for medieval peasants, ordinary folks like you, only with less insulation and a whole lot more livestock indoors. You're not sleeping on a memory foam mattress tonight. Instead, you're rolling out a lumpy heap of straw, your scratchy wool blanket barely covering your shivering knees. There's no thermostat to dial up, no electric heater humming in the corner, and sorry, there's definitely no hot cocoa waiting for you in the kitchen. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, I'd love to know where you're tuning in from and what time it is where you are. Drop your city and local time in the comments. It's always fascinating to see who's drifting off with us from across the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You pull the wool cloak tighter around your shoulders. It doesn't help much. The wind still creeps in through the gaps in your timber-framed walls. Outside, a pale moon glows through a cloudy sky, casting bluish shadows over the thatch of neighboring cottages. Inside, the flicker of the hearth barely holds back the darkness, much less the cold. Winter isn't a season for you. It's a test, the kind where the rules aren't written down, and the penalty for failing is sometimes fatal, and it's only just beginning. The fire has long since stopped roaring. All that's left now are a few stubborn embers, sullenly glowing red among the ash. You poke at them with an iron poker, trying to stir some life back into the heat. Maybe if you add a little kindling, just a scrap or two. But wood's too precious to waste at this hour, so you hesitate. Better cold than completely out by morning. Historians still argue whether peasant homes were ever truly warm, or if that's just a fantasy of modern nostalgia. What's more likely? You're living in a home built for minimal cost, not comfort. Wattle and daub walls that flex and crack as temperatures drop, letting icy drafts curl in from every direction. And the smell. You'd think the cold might mask it, but no. Damp wood, sheep droppings, sour ale, unwashed clothes, a cozy perfume of survival. You glance up. The thatched roof above your head has gaps that let in both moonlight and cold air. In the daylight, you might see a squirrel or two scurrying between rafters. At night, it's mostly just the wind's whistle, unless something bigger moves. Rats, birds? You try not to think about it. You rub your hands together and blow into your fingers. It's not enough. You tuck them under your armpits and rock slightly back and forth, trying to keep circulation moving. It's a quiet, instinctive dance, one every peasant knows. But here's something you didn't expect. Peasants actually fear too much warmth at night. A few believed that rapid temperature changes could wake up bad humors in the body. So many didn't sleep too close to the fire, even if they could. Just your luck, freezing was considered medicinal. You think about your neighbors, Thomas, who sleeps with his two dogs by the fire, and Ellen, the widow who keeps a goose under her skirts at night. True story, not because she's lonely, although maybe, but because a warm bird is better than any blanket. You try lying down. The straw mattress under you feels a bit moist. Maybe it's just a chill. Maybe the toddler had an accident. Either way, it's yours for the night. A few bugs scurry deeper as your weight settles in. You scratch an itch on your leg and try not to think about it too much. Because peasant families often all slept in the same bed. Not for love, not for convenience, but because huddled together was the only way to stay alive. Parents, children, grandparents, occasionally even guests, and sometimes animals. Privacy, that's a 21st century luxury. Outside, an owl calls. You flinch, maybe from the sound, or maybe from the wind that just slipped down your back, again like a ghost with icy fingers. Your teeth chatter, but you muffle the noise. No one likes a whiner. Instead, you pull the itchy blanket up and cover your head. This works, sort of. It holds in some warmth, yes, but also your breath. Soon it's muggy, uncomfortable. You peek out, just for a sip of fresh air, and bam, your nose turns to stone again. Modern comforts feel like fairy tales here, the kind of magic peasants wished were real. A flick of a switch, heated socks, microwave porridge. Instead, you've got a cracked bowl of yesterday's pottage, sitting by the fire. Maybe still warm enough to be edible, if you don't mind the crust forming on top. You roll onto your side. Bad idea. The straw pokes straight into your ribs. Back it is. Odd fact. Some peasants believed that cold dreams, dreams where you felt snow or wind, were signs of the devil's testing your soul. Warm dreams, by contrast, were divine. So if you wake up sweating, count yourself blessed. If you wake up frozen, well, maybe say a prayer. And just as you feel yourself drifting, half asleep, half shivering, you hear something outside. A faint crunch. Footsteps? A fox? A spirit? Your imagination spins as your toes curl against the cold sheet. You squeeze your eyes shut and hope morning comes quickly. You blink awake. Not because you're rested, because your nose is numb. Again. You sniff, and it's like inhaling icicles. The room is silent, except for the occasional creak of the wooden beams above, and the dull crackle of a log that finally gave up in the hearth. The fire's practically a memory now. Instinctively, you curl tighter beneath the blanket, but it's like wrapping yourself in a rough potato sack, soaked in yesterday's rain. Still, it's all you have. The hearth is the heart of this home, literally and symbolically. Without it, you wouldn't have warmth, light, or a way to heat food, or more honestly, to stop the food from killing you outright. But on nights like this, when wood is scarce and smoke clogs the air more than heat does, it feels like a cruel joke. You shuffle across the room, your feet protesting every icy step on the packed dirt floor. No insulation, no socks, and certainly no slippers. Just frost-nipped toes and the crunch of debris beneath your soles. You poke at the hearth again. A tiny red pulse flickers back at you, barely alive, like a mosquito trying to fight a hurricane. You kneel down, holding your palms over the embers like they're sacred. And to you, they are. Everyone in your family takes turns feeding this weak little fire. No one's allowed to forget. A mist stoking in the night. And the next morning begins with coughing, blue lips, and frostbite. odd fact of the day. Some medieval peasants believed hearth embers had protective powers. Leaving them untended overnight was thought to invite ill spirits or bad luck, so even superstition demanded good fire maintenance. Good job. You're doing your bit for both warmth and warding off evil. You toss in a bit of dried animal dung. Not glamorous, but it burns slow and steady. Wood is for the wealthy, or at least for lucky folk with forests nearby. You're stuck with what the cow left behind, dried on the shed wall, and fetched earlier in the day like it was treasure. Because in winter it is. As the fire begins to flicker again, the room reveals itself in flickering shadows. Soot-blackened beams overhead, walls with slivers of moonlight cutting across them, and your sleeping siblings clumped in a heap near the far end, wrapped like sad, shivering burritos. No one stirs. They're too exhausted, or maybe just conserving heat. The smell of smoke is everywhere. It stains the walls, your clothes, your lungs. You're used to breathing it in now. Though, fun fact, many scholars believe chronic respiratory illness was a common plague among peasants, not because of the cold, but because of constant indoor smoke inhalation. You nod slowly. Makes sense. Your lungs feel like they've been rubbed with charcoal. You stretch your arms over the hearth, soaking in the small burst of warmth. It's not much, but it'll have to do. You consider lying down again, but your body protests. Getting up made you aware of how cold you really were. Sometimes it's better to lie still and pretend you're warm, rather than move and realize you're not. You wrap a ragged cloth around your shoulders, a spare scrap, half frozen, and stare at the glowing coals. This is where your thoughts start to wander. You picture summer, bare feet on warm grass, ale that isn't half frozen, the sun actually warming your skin instead of running away by 4 p.m. But summer is months away. Right now, it's just you and the hearth. Historians still argue whether peasants even had chimneys during these early centuries. Most agree that smoke simply vented through a hole in the roof or just filled the house and seeped out eventually. You look up. Yup, the thatch above your head is black with soot. No flue, no pipe, just faith and airflow. You listen for a moment. Outside, the wind howls again, this time dragging something across the yard. Maybe a bucket, maybe a ghost. Your mind plays tricks when you're tired and cold. The moonlight stretches your shadow weirdly across the wall. For a split second, you look 7 feet tall. You chuckle softly. If only that came with extra body heat. You grab a chunk of dried bread and chew slowly. It's hard, tasteless, but it gives you something to do. You almost miss it cracking your teeth. Almost. Medieval food doesn't comfort, it fills. Barely. You remember something odd? Your neighbor once said that if you drew a circle of ash around your bed at night, it would trap the warmth inside. You're not sure if that's magic or madness, but right now it feels like science. Worth a shot tomorrow. You yawn, the warmth from the rekindled fire finally reaching your cheeks like a friendly pat. Sleep begins tugging again, heavier this time. You step carefully back to your spot and lower yourself down. The straw squeaks, the goat grunts beside you, and you pull the itchy wool up again. Tomorrow might be worse. Snow is coming, you heard them say. But for now, You've got a heartbeat of warmth, a flame still flickering in the dark, and a moment, just one, of quiet. And that's everything, really. In winter, you don't aim for comfort. You aim for not freezing to death. It's a low bar, but one worth clearing. You wake with a sneeze, then another, and now your eyes sting. There's straw in your mouth again. It somehow finds its way into every crevice of your sleeping space. Your clothes, your socks, if you have socks, even your dreams. You spit it out and blink toward the ceiling. The faint blue light of early dawn is trying its best to break through the gaps in the thatched roof above you, but mostly it just outlines the cold hanging in the air like an unwelcome ghost. You shift and immediately regret it. Your lower back is stiff from sleeping on uneven straw, and your legs are itchy. You scratch and discover a new bite or two. Fleas. Of course, the straw mattress is older than you are and has likely hosted more bugs than people. You groan and roll on to your other side, brushing away a mouse dropping with the back of your hand. No pillow, no mattress pad, no dreams of Egyptian cotton. Just straw, some of it wet. You're not asking questions about why. These so-called beds, if you're lucky enough to even have one, are little more than wooden frames stuffed with hay, or oat straw. Maybe a few scraps of linen thrown over the top if someone had a good year. Most peasants sleep 2 or 3 to a bed, heads at opposite ends, to reduce the likelihood of sharing lice. Though, let's be honest, it doesn't really work. You curl into yourself and hug your knees. That's the only warmth you're getting. One mainstream historical fact: straw mattresses weren't replaced often. They were refreshed by tossing in a few new handfuls now and then. You might go years sleeping in the same musty, pest-ridden padding, and you didn't dare complain. Someone else in the village was likely sleeping on the floor with nothing but a damp sheepskin. Your little sister stirs beside you, groaning softly and reaching for the blanket, or what passes for one. It's more of a rug, honestly, stitched from mismatched patches of wool, some of which were clearly cut from a pair of trousers. She tugs it over her head with a grunt and disappears beneath it like a turtle into a shell. You sigh. This is the morning ritual. Wake, scratch, complain silently, then brace for the chill of getting up. But not just yet. You shift, and your foot brushes something warm and hairy. It squeaks. Ah, the family goat again. She wandered in during the night and made herself at home beside your legs. You should probably shoo her off the straw, but honestly, she's warm, and not the worst bedmate you've ever had. You let her stay. Quirky tidbit time. In some villages, it wasn't unusual for pigs or chickens to sleep inside the house, not in a pen, but with you, partly for warmth, partly for security, and partly because your house wasn't really separate from your barn. There were no real dividing walls. You slept where you lived, and so did they. You stare at the wooden beams overhead and wonder, not for the first time, if they'll hold through the winter. The thatching above them is sagging in places, covered in mildew, and definitely home to more than a few birds. You can hear one fluttering now, maybe a blackbird nesting above your bed. You silently pray it doesn't relieve itself through the rafters. Again. Historians still argue whether peasants saw their homes as miserable shelters or cozy survival bunkers. Your mind wanders as you imagine some modern expert digging through your hay bed centuries from now, probably complaining about the lack of archaeological clarity while dodging mouse bones and ancient lice. You smirk. Let them dig. From outside, the first sounds of morning begin. A rooster somewhere nearby. The creak of a bucket, handle being lifted. A muffled cough. You can smell someone's breakfast. A thin, burnt barley porridge with yesterday's scraps tossed in for luck. It actually makes your stomach growl. You consider getting up, but your feet are already bracing for that shock of cold from the floor. You lie still a moment longer. You look to your side, your brother snoring, mouth open, face half buried in straw, hand resting on a piece of crusty bread. He clearly tried to eat before sleep took him. You debate stealing it, but decide against it. The cold has made you desperate, but not that desperate. Eventually, you summon the courage and swing your legs over the side. Your toes hit the cold earth and curl on instinct. It's like dipping them in ice water. You hop up, muttering under your breath, and immediately regret leaving your semi-warm nest of straw. Now comes the dance. Get your clothes on fast. They're stiff, still damp from yesterday's snow, and absolutely not clean. You sniff your shirt, wrinkle your nose, and pull it on anyway. Soap is rare, hot water even rarer, and laundry day is basically whenever the bucket isn't frozen solid. You stuff your feet into rough shoes, leather if you're lucky, but most likely cloth and bits of wrapped wool. They don't fit well, they never have, but they're better than nothing. As you move, you start to feel the bite of the air again. It's sharper now, more alert, like it's noticing. You're awake and ready to play its favorite game. See how long it takes to turn your fingers blue. You wince as you grab the wooden door latch, your breath puffing in front of you, like steam from a broken kettle. And as the door creaks open and the cold wind rushes in, you realize that your straw bed, for all its flaws, might have been the warmest part of your day. You shut the door behind you quickly, but the cold has already wrapped itself around your body, like a wet shroud. No matter how fast you move, it's always one step ahead. Your fingers sting, your nose starts running, and your breath puffs out in tight little clouds as you try to decide. Do you head back to bed and surrender? Or do you dress like your life depends on it? Because, frankly, it does. You step back inside and shuffle toward the wall where your clothes hang. Well, drape would be more accurate. They're stiff with frost, like someone dipped them in icy wax overnight. You give your tunic a shake, and flakes of old dirt, and who knows what fall to the floor. You sigh. This is just how things are. Getting dressed in winter is a process of negotiation with the elements, and the elements always win. Layering becomes your main defense. First, the linen shirt, thin, scratchy, and only slightly less miserable than wearing nothing. Then, a woolen tunic, itchy as hay and twice as heavy. Another thicker tunic on top if you're lucky. Or maybe just an old cloak with a hole where the clasp should be. No mirrors, no shame. Fashion here means not frozen. A common medieval saying, better itchy than dead. Okay, not officially recorded, but it should have been. Underneath it all, you wrap scraps of cloth around your legs. Real trousers are rare. Most peasants rely on leggings or breeches and whatever else they can find to fill the gaps. The more mismatched your outfit, the more seasoned your survival instinct. Your neighbor once wore a child's wool bonnet as a neck warmer. No one laughed. Everyone just nodded like he was a genius. Modern layering tips, peasants invented them. Shirt, tunic, outer cloak, and still the cold cuts through like a rude dinner guest who wasn't invited but came anyway and brought sleet. You glance at your hands, already red, already chapped. You rub them briskly and tuck them under your arms. Gloves? You mean those old rags you sometimes tie around your wrists and hope they don't unravel while working outside. Actual fitted gloves are for knights, nobles, or the bishop's spoiled nephew. You're just hoping for a dry pair of socks today. Historians still debate how many garments a peasant truly owned. Some say 2 complete outfits. Others argue it was more like a rotating jumble of parts. Tunics patched with other tunics. Cloaks stolen from scarecrows. Whatever kept you warm, you wore it, even if it once belonged to someone else. Or something else. There's a rumor the baker's son wears boots lined with squirrel. No one's confirmed it, but no one's denying it either. And now comes the final touch. Your hood, it's not just for rain. This wool cowl covers your head, ears, neck, and sometimes your dignity. It itches like a curse, but it's your best weapon against frostbite. You tug it down tight and feel a brief, wonderful moment where your ears aren't screaming. Then come the shoes, or rather, shoes. They're patched leather, cracked in 3 places, and only one ties properly. You squint at the left one. Is that ice? Yep. Frozen manure and all. Still better than barefoot. A quirky little practice floats to mind. Peasants sometimes stuff their shoes with straw or moss to provide insulation. You tried it once. The moss was still damp. You smelled like a bog for 3 days. You shuffled toward the door again, arms awkwardly stiff in all your layers, and brace for the cold like a knight going into battle. The wind howls outside, rattling the wooden slats like it's testing your resolve. You take a deep breath and swing the door open. It's like being slapped by a ghost made of ice. Your whole body tenses up, and you instinctively duck your head, pulling your hood lower. The wind worms its way between the seams of your clothing, laughing as it does. Every inch of you is covered, except your face. And your face? It's crying, without your permission. Still, you feel something else underneath the misery, pride, because for all the discomfort, all the chattering teeth and itchy arms, you're dressed, you're ready, and you did it with whatever you could scrape together. You see your neighbor across the road, barefoot, wearing a cloak that looks like it was once a tapestry. He raises a hand in greeting. You wave back, your stiff fingers barely moving. He's not judging you. No one is. In a medieval village, layering isn't just about staying warm. It's about surviving together. You share advice, swap garments, even argue over which types of wool hold heat better. Spoiler, it's always the one you don't own. You start moving, your arms heavy with cloth, and your legs waddling slightly from the sheer bulk. You feel like a walking laundry pile. But you're warm enough to keep walking, and that means you're winning. Here's a little detail most history books skip. Medieval peasants would sometimes sleep in their clothes, not because it saved time in the morning, but because getting undressed at night meant risking the loss of body heat you'd never regain. It was safer to stay layered, even if you woke up smelling like a sheep pen with legs. You remember last winter when old Edric tried to air out at night and slept with just a thin tunic? He caught a chill and sneezed his soul out for 3 weeks. Since then, he slept wearing two cloaks, a hat, and a bucket near his bed in case his nose runs. You envy his commitment. So now, layered up like a cabbage, you trudge out to start your day. You're not comfortable, but you're functional. And that's what medieval winter clothing was all about. Not looking good, not even feeling good, just staying alive, long enough to see the thaw. One frozen toe at a time. The door creaks closed behind you, but not before another rush of frigid air sweeps in and curls around your ankles like a hungry cat. You grit your teeth and step forward into the yard, boots crunching over a thin crust of ice that formed sometime before dawn. The wind cuts sideways, stinging your cheeks, sneaking under your cloak like a pickpocket, and leaving behind nothing but discomfort. The sky is a dim gray, not quite morning, not quite night, the kind of gray that feels like it could last forever. And now, the real trick of the day begins: body heat management. Because the moment you stop moving, that cold clamps down. You've got to stay active, not just for chores, but because stillness invites the freeze to take hold of your joints, your fingers, even your lungs. So you start with the most time-tested, least elegant solution known to medieval peasants: huddling with animals. You push open the warped wooden door of the lean-to stable next to your cottage and are instantly met with the warm, earthy breath of a cow. You close your eyes for a moment. It smells like dung, yes, but also like safety, like steam, like hope. This is where your family keeps the real heaters, not machines, not fireplaces. Pigs, chickens, goats, sometimes all in the same room. Today, you're checking on two goats, a few scrawny hens, and your family's only cow, old Mags. She's been with you since before your sister was born. And even now, half blind and cranky, she radiates heat like a slow burning oven. You sit beside her and press your gloved hands against her warm flank. She snorts, unimpressed but tolerant. That's love, peasant style. Quirky fact: in the dead of winter, peasants sometimes brought animals into the house at night, not just for convenience, but for thermal insulation. A pig under the table was worth 3 extra blankets. You personally remember the year you spent a week sleeping beside a goose that honked every time you shifted. It wasn't restful, but it was warm. Historians still debate whether this practice was necessity or custom. But if you've ever had your feet thawed by a snoring pig, you know the answer. It was survival instinct. No peasant gave up comfort unless they absolutely had to. The animals stir as you move among them. You gather the eggs, just too cold to the touch, and tuck them into a pocket beneath your cloak, hoping your body heat keeps them from cracking. One chicken tries to peck your hand. You glare. She glares back. Mutual understanding is reached. You lean against the cow again, just for a few minutes. The heat radiating off her is better than any fire. She shifts slightly, pressing her side against you. You're pretty sure it's affection. Or maybe she just thinks you're part of the wall. You look around. The floor of the stable is a mess of hay, frozen mud, and the unmistakable aroma of livestock. The walls leak wind like sieves, but it's still better than standing outside. You wrap your cloak tighter and consider staying here all day. Just you, Mags, and the steady warmth of biological central heating. Outside, the village is starting to wake. You hear distant voices, the clank of a bucket, the creak of a cartwheel, turning reluctantly through frozen mud. Life stirs, barely. And now comes the question no one likes asking. Do you try to start a fire out here? Some families did. If they had enough dried wood or dung, they'd set up a little hearth near their animals, especially if the barn was too cold even with body heat. But fire near hay is risky. And let's be honest, if something burns down, no one's rebuilding it until spring. You settle for rubbing your hands briskly and breathing into them. The goat gives you a weird look. You return it. Your mind drifts as you shiver. You recall stories from elders about the old days when winters were so bad, people froze inside their homes. One tale says a woman turned to ice with her hands still folded in prayer. You're not sure if it's true, but on nights like last night, you don't doubt it. You pull your hood tighter, letting it cast a shadow over your face. The fabric brushes your cheeks and catches some of your breath, creating a tiny warm pocket around your mouth and nose. It's the only way to stay ahead of the chill. Microclimates, made of wool and hope. You shift to stand. Your joints creak louder than the stable door. You stretch, groaning, and scratch your shoulder through 4 layers of wool. That's another fun feature of peasant layering. The itch, it never really stops. It just becomes background noise, like the wind or the sound of someone coughing down the lane. You give Mags a final pat and step back outside. Instantly, you regret it. The warmth evaporates like it never existed. You pick up your pace, stomping a bit to get the blood moving. You need to chop wood, or collect dung, or shovel snow, or all 3. But before you get too far, you see your neighbor again, Ellen. She's got 2 chickens under her arms, and a 3rd perched on her head. She nods at you solemnly. You nod back, because, let's face it, you've also done worse for warmth. Some say peasants were resourceful. Others say they were desperate. You say, yes, same thing really. You shuffle across the yard, boots squelching in the semi-frozen mud. Every step sticks just a bit, like the ground is reluctant to let go of your feet. The sun is trying its best to rise, but it mostly just spreads a pale yellow smudge across the foggy sky, like someone rubbed butter on cold stone. You glance up at your cottage's roof, a sloping patchwork of thatch, moss, and hope, and you see it, softest curl of smoke, whispering upward from the tiny hole near the ridge. Barely there, but it's your signal. The fire hasn't gone completely out. You might just make it through another night without freezing your backside off. Of course, your joy is short-lived. A sudden gust of wind slices around the side of the house, and you swear it goes straight through your cloak and tunic, like you're wearing parchment. You hunch your shoulders and tug your hood lower. The roof groans above you, a slow creak of age and weather. as if it too is bracing for what's coming. Because here's the truth, your house is not built for this. The walls are timber framed, filled in with wattle and daub, a fancy way of saying sticks, straw, and mud mashed together like a poorly conceived cake. In the summer, it's enough. In spring, it leaks. But in winter, it's like trying to sleep inside a wicker basket during a snowstorm. You duck your head inside, just in time to avoid a stray drip from the thatch. It lands on the doorstep and instantly becomes a little splash of cold regret. Historians still argue whether these peasant homes were ever sealed in any meaningful sense. Some say they had interior plastering or layered fabric to block drafts. Others believe most were drafty by design to let smoke out and keep air moving. You, on the other hand, argue that nothing should move this much when you're trying to sleep. Inside, your breath still fogs in front of you. That fire you saw smoking, it's down to smoldering ash. You drop your bundle of dried kindling beside it and crouch low, puffing gently, coaxing the coals back to life, like a nervous parent over a sick child. A spark catches. You cheer silently. You add a few dung bricks, today's fuel of choice, and sit back on your heels. And then it begins. The high-pitched whistle. Not from the kettle. Ha! No such thing. But from the wind squeezing its way through the walls. You look toward the corner, near your straw bed, and sure enough, the daub has cracked again. A fresh fissure, just wide enough to let in a ribbon of icy air that slithers along the floor and finds your ankles like it's got a grudge. You plug the gap with a rag. Actually, it's part of a ruined apron from last harvest. Now it's a wind-blocking masterpiece. For a few minutes, it holds. This is the game you play every winter. Patch and pray. A bit of cloth here, a folded cloak there. Someone once shoved a dead rat into a wall crack to stop a draft. He was desperate. He was applauded. You sit back against the cold wall and close your eyes for a moment. The roof creaks again. The wind hums through the thatch above you. You imagine each stalk of straw vibrating in harmony, like some twisted winter harp. A lullaby for the frostbitten. Quirky fact, thatched roofs weren't just insulation. They were also ecosystems. Birds nested in them. Mice tunneled through them. And sometimes, if you were really lucky, you'd wake up to find a weasel staring down from the rafters, like it paid rent. You open one eye, no whistle today, just a line of frost slowly creeping along the edge of the ceiling, marking time like a silent sundial of doom. You stand and stretch, your spine cracking audibly. You rub your hands over your arms, then stomp your feet to shake some warmth back into them. Outside, the wind howls again, this time rattling the wooden shutters. One flies open with a bang. You curse softly, PG version, and shuffle over to close it. The latch is frozen. Of course it is. You spit on your fingers for just enough moisture and warmth to unstick the wood, then slam it shut and tie it off with a loop of twine. That's peasant winter maintenance in a nutshell. A bit of spit, a bit of string, and a lot of swearing under your breath. You sit again by the fire, which is finally beginning to look like something you could call comforting. It pops once, a single spark dancing out and landing harmlessly near your foot. The warmth radiates slowly, mostly upward, of course, because physics has always been rude. but you angle yourself so your knees get some of the glory. Your breath no longer fogs quite so much. Your fingers are pink again, not purple. And for the first time today, you feel almost okay. You glance up at the ceiling again. The thatch is holding. For now, the wind hasn't ripped it off. Yet. Still, you can't help but wonder, why did they build houses like this? Why didn't someone think to make thicker walls, better seals, maybe even some stones in the mix? And then you remember money, or rather, the absolute lack of it. You build with what you have. You mend what breaks. You survive with what's left. Comfort is a luxury. Warmth is a prize. And your house, despite its flaws, its cracks, its leaks, its wheezing wooden beams, has kept you alive. So far, you wrap your arms around your knees and listen to the fire crackle. The walls groan, the roof whistles, the wind wails, and somewhere in all of it, you feel at home. You feel it before you hear it, a deep rumble in your belly. Hunger always strikes hardest in the morning, especially in the cold. You blink blearily at the hearth. There is nothing on it, just blackened stones, and the faint perfume of last night's thin stew still hanging in the air like a ghost too sad to leave. You stand slowly, joints creaking in protest, and shuffle across the room to the bucket near the door. Ice skims its surface. You knock it with a stick, breaking through, and scoop a handful to your lips. It tastes like wood and iron and winter itself, but at least it's wet. Now comes the hard part. You need to relieve yourself, and that means stepping back into the cold. For real this time. You glance toward the far wall, where a crude chamber pot sits in the shadows. It's technically an option, one that smells like a promise you don't want fulfilled, but it's either that or the outhouse, and you know what that means. Layers on, cloak wrapped, hood pulled tight. You brace yourself and unlatch the front door again. The wind greets you with a slap to the face. You mumble something that wouldn't pass a churchman's ears and trudge toward the outhouse. It stands at the far edge of your yard, a rickety little wooden box perched over a pit of questionable depth and highly questionable aroma. Its door hangs on one hinge. Its roof is a suggestion, not a structure. You push it open. The scent hits you like a medieval curse. You do your business quickly, very quickly, and hop back out before you can freeze to the seat. You've heard stories. You don't want to become one. Historians still argue whether medieval people used outhouses regularly or preferred the chamber pot and ditch combo. You personally side with whichever doesn't involve frostbite on sensitive parts. Because, as you've just rediscovered, the outhouse in winter is less of a toilet and more of a test of will. You head back toward the house, passing the corner where the thatch leaks the worst. A puddle has formed, frozen into a tiny glacier that's slowly overtaking your woodpile. You make a mental note to deal with that later, which in medieval time means probably forget until spring. You step inside, grateful for the relative stillness. Your breath puffs as you walk, but not as much as before. The fire is helping, slowly. You sit near it, rub your hands again, and eye the chamber pot in the corner. Still not your first choice, but better than marching out there again at midnight. That's why it's there. For cold nights, sick days, or when wolves are rumored nearby. Quirky tidbit. Chamber pots weren't always pots. Sometimes they were carved wooden bowls, old buckets, or even reused cooking vessels. Yes, really. You once used a cracked ale tankard for a week. No one noticed. You washed it, mostly. You remembered the time last winter when the pot froze solid. There was a moment of terrible silence in your family when someone asked if they should melt it out. You all decided to just bury it outside and start over. Inside the home, privacy is nearly non existent. You sleep in a pile, dress in corners, and when nature calls at night, you pretend not to hear. It's a shared misery, a routine embarrassment everyone quietly agrees to ignore. One morning, your cousin tripped over the chamber pot in the dark and shouted so loud you thought it was Judgment Day. The bruise was epic. The smell? Worse. But still, having any place to go during the frigid dark hours is a privilege. The rich have stone privies or servant dug trenches. You've got a pot and a pair of boots. You sit back down on the bench near the hearth and let the fire chase the chill out of your fingers. You wriggle your toes inside your boots. One still feels damp. Not ideal. But again, the goal here isn't comfort. It's survival, preferably with dry socks. But beggars, as they say, can't choose. Outside, the wind has calmed a little. The trees grown less. A bird chirps once, hesitant, like it's checking if the world's still frozen. You take that as a good sign. Inside, your little sister has woken up and is poking the embers with a stick, whispering to them like they're alive. Please stay, she murmurs. You get it? That fire is the only thing standing between your family and an unforgiving, endless night. You start planning tonight's sleep. Who gets closest to the hearth? Probably Grandpa. His joints scream if he sleeps cold. The rest of you will pile in next to him, ranked by age or grumpiness, or whose turn it is to not complain. Sleeping arrangements are fluid, based on warmth more than anything else. And tonight, you might just volunteer to sleep beside the chamber pot. It's not glamorous, but it's inside. And inside beats outside every time. So for now, you settle into your corner, feet near the fire, cloak pulled tight, eyes blinking slowly in the smoky air. The chores can wait a moment longer. The outhouse is behind you. The chamber pot is on standby. The roof still holds, and your breath? Your breath fogs just a little less. Your stomach grumbles again. A long, low growl that echoes louder in your empty cottage than you'd like to admit. You press a hand over it and glance toward the corner, where the food stores live, or rather, barely survive. A burlap sack holds the last of the barley. 2 onions sit nearby, both suspiciously soft, and hanging from a hook is a string of dried herbs that smells more like smoke than seasoning. This morning's breakfast, it'll be as humble as yesterday's. Maybe thinner. You ladle a bit of yesterday's pottage, basically barley mush with a cabbage, if you're lucky, into a small iron pot and nudge it toward the edge of the fire. It bubbles slowly, resentfully, as if it knows how little enthusiasm you have for eating it. The scent rises, earthy, faintly sour, comforting, in the way that anything warm is comforting right now. You sip. It burns your tongue slightly, but you don't care. It's warm, and warm wins. But something else wins too, something less welcome. A cough. It starts low in your chest, then bubbles up before you can stop it. You cover your mouth quickly. Too late. Your little sister looks up from her spot by the fire, eyes wide. You nod. Just the smoke, you whisper, even though you're not entirely sure. Because winter in a medieval village doesn't just bring frost and hunger, it brings sickness. And when the cold settles into your lungs, it doesn't like to leave. Historians still argue whether medieval peasants truly understood the link between cold air and illness, but they absolutely believed the cold was dangerous. Not just uncomfortable, dangerous. Many thought cold opened the body, letting bad humors in. Others blamed night air entirely, calling it miasma or foul wind. You? You don't need theories. You just know what happens. First the cough, then the ache, then the fever, and in too many cases, the funeral bell. Last winter, 3 people in your village died before Christmas. 2 old, 1 young. No wounds, no war, just cold nights and weaker lungs. You stand and add a pinch of herbs to the pottage, nettle and thyme, or what might be thyme. Your mother always said it soothed the chest, or at least masked the taste. You serve a small bowl to your sister, who warms her hands on it first before sipping slowly. You smile. Better today, you lie. She nods, like she believes you, or just wants to. You sit back and let your mind drift to your neighbor Ellen again. A few winters ago, her whole family was hit with a coughing sickness. She swore by garlic and boiled ale as the cure. The garlic, you understood. The ale? Well, warm liquid is warm liquid. She once told you that rubbing goose fat on your chest would help draw out the chill. You tried it. It mostly just made you smell like a roast, and not in a good way. Another quirky remedy comes to mind. Someone once tried stuffing dried moss into their nose to filter out the night air. The logic? Questionable. The visual? Hilarious. But honestly, if it kept you from waking up with frozen nostrils, you might consider it again. You cough again. This time it lingers. Your ribs ache from it. You take a sip of the pottage and let it slide down slowly. Warmth radiates from your belly, spreading like a candle's glow. Not enough to fix everything, but maybe enough to carry you through the morning. There is no doctor here, no apothecary. If things get bad, someone might go fetch the midwife. She dabbles in more than babies, but most of her cures involve prayers, hot compresses, and a stick to bite when things get serious. You glance toward the fire and feel the pull of sleep again. But it's morning now. You can't afford to doze too long, not when water needs holing and the thatch needs patching, but your body aches deep in the bones. And that's the other truth of winter sickness. It's not just the illness itself, it's what it keeps you from doing. Every missed chore is a step closer to freezing. Every skipped day of hauling wood means the fire burns lower. Illness is the thief you never see coming. It doesn't just take your breath, it takes your chances. You shift beneath your layers, trying to stretch your spine without groaning. It mostly works. The pottage is gone now. Your sister licks the bowl quietly. You pretend not to notice. She's not being rude. She's being thorough. You look toward the bucket of water again. You'll need more soon. But not yet. For now, you sit beside the fire, wrapped in wool, Heartbeat steady, breath shallow. You hope this cough is just smoke. You hope the ache is just stiffness. You hope because in winter, hope is the warmest thing you have. The pottage pot now sits empty beside the hearth, and the last of its warmth lingers in your chest like the glow of a fading memory. You press your fingers to your ribs where the cough left its mark earlier. It still aches. Not sharp, not urgent, just persistent, like a splinter you can't quite pull out. You shift uncomfortably and glance at your hands. The skin across your knuckles is cracked, flaking, and faintly purple at the edges. The cold hasn't just seeped in, it's settled. You rub your fingers together, then reach for the little cloth pouch tucked into the corner of the hearth. Inside, a few crushed dried leaves and a pinch of something that might once have been medicinal. You think it's comfrey, or maybe just hay that smells convincing. You dab a few drops of water into the pouch and mash the contents into a paste, then rub it gently over your skin. It stings, but the ache? Just enough relief to pretend it's working. It reminds you of something your grandfather once said. To fight winter, you need to think like winter. You never asked what that meant. Maybe he didn't know either. Maybe it was just one of those old peasant sayings that sound wise until you start coughing blood and realize winter doesn't care how poetic you are. The cold air today is particularly sharp, dry, biting, the kind that snatches moisture from your skin before your body even knows it's gone. You wrap a scrap of linen around your hands and tuck them under your arms. It helps briefly. And then, as if on cue, your toe throbs. You don't even need to look, you know the signs. Red, swollen, burning despite the cold. You wriggle it in your boot and grit your teeth. Frostbite doesn't shout, it whispers. Mainstream history fact. Peasants dealt with frostbite regularly, though the term itself didn't exist yet. They called it burning cold or dead finger, and there were plenty of theories on how to treat it. Most of them painful, few of them helpful. One of the more imaginative cures, rubbing the afflicted area with snow. Yes, more cold. The logic being, what froze you might also unfreeze you. You tried it once last year. You also screamed loudly. Your cousin laughed loudly. You yank off your boot to inspect the damage. Your big toe is angry looking, purple at the edges, skin shiny and taut. You press gently. The skin barely moves. You breathe out slowly and reach for the only thing you do have, a rag warmed near the fire. You wrap it around the toe and hold it there, whispering under your breath. Not a prayer, exactly, but a rhythm. A little song your mother used to hum when she wrapped your feet at night. The truth is, most injuries in winter are invisible at first. The damage happens quietly. Skin stiffens, nerves go numb, and you don't even realize the danger. Until it's too late, you think back to the Thatcher's boy. Last year, he fell into a snowdrift and stayed there too long. His fingers turned black by sundown. They cut them off with a bone saw heated in the hearth. He never cried, just stared ahead, like winter had already taken the rest of him too. Historians still debate how widespread knowledge of frostbite treatment really was. Some believe local healers had effective remedies. Others argue most peasant care was trial, error, and folklore. You lean toward the latter. After all, this is a world where the same neighbor who tells you to rub snow on your foot also insists goose feathers cure melancholy. You sit back and carefully pull your boot on again. It stings as it slides over the swollen toe. But you get it on, sort of. You limp today. That's fine. Limping is still walking. You blow warm air into your hands and glance at your sister. She's dozing now, curled near the hearth, arms wrapped around her knees like a bundle of rags with a pulse. You smile weakly, just too small to understand all of this yet. Too small to feel the ache deep in the bones, or the fear that settles in when you wonder what might go wrong before spring arrives. But you do. You feel it every morning now, every time your joints resist, every time your fingers forget how to bend. You pull your cloak tighter, not because it helps, but because it feels like doing something. You try to remember the remedies people whispered about: hot stones placed under blankets, onion poultices for swelling, bread soaked in ale and slapped on the skin. Because if it worked on bruises, maybe it would work on frostbite. No one knows. Everyone just hopes. That's what winter in your world is built on. Not knowledge, not comfort, just hope wrapped in wool. You shift, repositioning yourself by the fire, letting the heat soak into your legs. You think about the days ahead: more snow, more coughing, more cracked skin and bruised toes, but also more fires, more moments like this, however small. And then, from outside, a gust of wind hisses against the house. The walls creak, the fire flutters. A bit of soot spirals up the chimney hole and drifts down beside you, like ash from a too quiet volcano. You look at it and think, one toe down, 9 to go. You shift again, trying to find a position that doesn't aggravate your aching toe or make your spine scream louder than the wind outside. It's a hopeless effort, but one you repeat anyway, like a ritual, because every movement reminds you you're still here, still surviving. But winter isn't just a battle of cold and coughs. It's a time when the dark stretches long into the morning and creeps in again before supper. And in that darkness, your village doesn't just fight frostbite, it fights fear. You've heard the stories. Everyone has. Tales passed from grandmother to grandchild, whispered by candlelight, always starting with "in winters like this one." Stories of things that lurk in shadows, of spirits that slip under doorways and perch above rafters, of witches who ride the wind, stealing warmth from sleeping babies, of dark shapes watching from tree lines, leaving no footprints, just sickness in their wake. You used to laugh. You don't anymore, because in the dead of night, when your fire burns low and your skin shivers beneath 3 layers, even you start to wonder. It begins as it always does, a scratching at the door, the wind probably, or a branch, but your sister hears it too. Her eyes open in the dim light, and she pulls the blanket up over her head. You don't move, you just listen to the wind, to the whine of cold wood shrinking in the walls, to the sound that might be footsteps, or just your heart trying to escape through your ears. A common practice in your village, one you've followed since childhood, is to hang a piece of iron near the doorway, an old horseshoe, bent nail, or rusty tool, not because it's useful, but because it's protective. They say spirits can't cross iron. You've got one too. A jagged black hook from a broken latch wedged into the wall beside the door. It's ugly. It's probably cursed, but you sleep a little easier knowing it's there. Quirky fact: some families hang dried herbs, especially sage, lavender, or rue, over doorways and windows during the cold months. Not for scent, for safety. It's supposed to keep evil out and warmth in. Whether it works is unclear, but you've seen your neighbor Ellen smack her children with a lavender bundle to drive out the frost demons. They didn't get sick that year, so maybe there's something to it. You know the cold plays tricks, but your village plays along. You've seen men carve faces into pieces of firewood before burning them, believing it would ward off nightfall. Women place coins beneath the hearthstone to keep bad spirits poor and therefore uninterested. And every child knows not to whistle after dark. Whistling draws things closer. Historians still argue how much of this was true belief and how much was cultural routine. Was it religion, folklore, or just the human mind inventing company when the nights got too long? All you know is that when the darkness stretches on like this, even you avoid walking too far from the hearth. You reach into the pouch of herbs again and draw out a little charm your grandmother made. A few braided threads, a bone bead, and a feather. It smells faintly of mold and comfort. She told you it was for the cold that walks. You didn't ask what that meant. You just kept it. The scratching has stopped now. Or maybe it never started. Either way, the silence is worse. You toss another dung brick into the fire, and it catches with a hiss. The room glows warmer for a moment. Your sister peeks out from under the blanket. "Do you think the wind has faces?" she asks quietly. You pause, then nod. "Only when you look too long." She blinks slowly, then smiles just a little, and ducks back under. You think of the time last year, when father woke screaming, convinced something had climbed into the house through the chimney. He swore he saw a shadow standing over the fire, just watching, waiting. He couldn't sleep for 3 nights. No one laughed, no one questioned. That's not how these things work. You simply add another charm to the wall and light the fire earlier. You sleep in shifts, and you keep an eye on the smoke. Even now, you watch the way it twists. Normally it rises straight, but when it curls sideways, that's when you worry. You know it's probably just air currents or a leak in the thatch. But then again, maybe it's not. That's the essence of winter fear. It blurs. Is it wind or whispering? Are those animal tracks or something walking on 2 legs, barefoot, in the snow? Your village holds fast to traditions in this season. You mark your doors with chalk during feast days. You hum old songs to ward off the biting ones. You never leave out breadcrumbs after dark. Spirits hate being teased. You even recall a story where a man tried to burn green wood in winter. The next day, all his food spoiled, and the roof collapsed. Coincidence? Maybe, but no one else ever risked it again. You sit quietly now, watching the fire burn, fingers twitching just slightly. Not from cold, but from caution. The night outside is pressing in, thick and unmoving. You feel it along your shoulders, down your spine. Not pain, not cold, just presence. But your fire is still burning. Your sister is still breathing slow and steady, and the iron hook is still there, cold and reassuring. You lean back, eyes heavy. The scratching doesn't come again, or maybe it never did. You hum softly, just a line from that lullaby your mother used to sing. Sleep beneath the turning stars. No frost shall find your bones. And for now, it works. The lullaby fades on your breath, disappearing into the crackling hush of the hearth. You close your eyes for a moment, letting the warmth from the fire press softly against your cheeks, your nose, your weary shoulders. The quiet wraps around you like a shawl, and for a second, you forget how tired, how cold, how constantly aware of your own survival you've been. Then you feel it, that feeling, that subtle, creeping numbness that tells you you need to move or risk stiffening into a statue. You shift your legs, grunting softly, and stretch just enough to feel the familiar sting return to your fingers. Alive, still alive. And now it's time for the next part of the ritual, the night drink. Not a luxury, not a celebration, just another tool in the peasant's arsenal of staying barely warm and barely asleep. You reach for the small clay mug sitting near the fire. Its contents? A few sips of weak ale, warmed slightly from the ambient heat, diluted with water that may or may not have been entirely clean. But it's not about the taste. It's about what it does. It soothes, it dulls, it chases the sharpness out of your belly and softens the edges of the night. You take a slow sip. It's sour, but not unpleasant. You've had worse, much worse. Mainstream historical fact: medieval peasants, including children, drank weak ale regularly, not just for fun, but because water was often unsafe. Boiling was a chore, and ale, even when thin and bitter, offered hydration without the risk of dysentery. A mug before bed wasn't indulgence, it was defense. And yes, warm ale helped with sleep, not just because of its mild alcohol, but because it was warm. That alone made it precious. You glance toward the fire, still steady. You'll feed it one last time before bed, just enough to last through the midnight hours. Not too much. You can't afford to run out of fuel before morning. Your sister stirs beside you. Is it ready? She mumbles. You hand her a smaller mug. She sips it cautiously, grimacing, but doesn't complain. She knows what it's for. Even at her age, she understands that a warm belly helps keep fingers and toes attached to your body. That's not a metaphor. That's life in winter. You shift again and wrap your cloak tighter. Your eyes flick to the little wooden box near the hearth. Inside are a few crumbling biscuits made of rye and barley flour, rock hard and dry as a bone. You take one out, soften it in your ale, and chew slowly. It crumbles into paste on your tongue. Not delightful, but filling. Filling enough. You hear movement outside. Not mysterious, not eerie, just someone passing by. Probably the miller's apprentice, coming back late from feeding the animals. Or maybe old widow Agnes, who walks the lanes before bed to chase out the spirits. With muttered psalms and a stick. You once asked her why she does it. She said, "Because they remember me from before, when I was young, and I want them to keep remembering." You didn't ask again. You sip more ale and feel your body relax a bit more. Warmth blooming from within now, not just from the fire, but from inside your stomach. You sigh, This is as good as it gets, for now. You think of the old advice passed down in the village. Drink warm, sleep close, and never let your feet touch cold earth before dawn. That last one, you swear by it. Your brother once walked barefoot across the floor before sunrise and lost 2 toenails to the frost. He jokes about it now, but you remember the sound he made when it happened. No joke in that. Quirky tidbit. Some peasants used to boil pebbles in ale, then wrap them in cloth and tuck them into their beds. They'd sleep with them against their chests or under their arms, believing it would boil the frost out of the blood. You tried it once. The pebbles scorched your skin, but your chest stayed warm for hours. Tonight, though, you just have the mug, and maybe that's enough. Your sister finishes hers and nestles down beneath the blanket, sighing softly, eyes fluttering shut. You tuck the edge of the cloak under her chin, then sit back and take the final sip from your mug. The warmth is fading already, but it leaves something behind. A little weight in your belly, a little heaviness in your limbs, and maybe, if you're lucky, enough comfort to help you sleep through the worst hours of the night. Historians still argue whether these bedtime drinks truly offered any health benefit, or if they were just a form of peasant placebo. But from your end of the straw mattress, it doesn't matter. It feels like it works. And in this kind of cold, feelings are often all you have. You set the mug aside, poke the fire one last time, and curl beside your sister, wrapping the shared cloak around your shoulders. The embers glow gently, casting soft red light across the walls. The wind outside has calmed a bit, or maybe your ears are finally adjusting. The ale hums softly in your blood. Your eyes grow heavy. You rest your head on your arm and breathe slowly. The night is still cold, still long, still full of sounds you don't want to hear. But your belly is warm. Your sister is snoring softly beside you. And your last thought before sleep is, I made it through one more day. You wake just after midnight. Not because of any noise or alarm, but because your feet are screaming. Not with pain, exactly, but with that peculiar, slow creeping cold that starts in your toes and makes its way upward, like it's looking for something important to ruin. You blink, disoriented, and reach down to rub them through the rough weave of your socks. You can feel that they've turned hard and stiff, like little frozen loaves. Welcome to phase 2 of medieval winter survival, the night shift. No one talks about it much, but sleeping straight through the night is more myth than reality for peasants. Most families wake at least once to feed the fire, to turn over, to check for drafts, or just because their body has decided it's done lying on straw and bruises for a while. And tonight, your body is definitely done. You sit up slowly. The fire has dimmed to embers again, but a faint warmth still clings to the stones. You reach over, fumble for a stick, and prod the coals. They blink awake, barely, and you feed them a small piece of dry dung. It sizzles and smokes, not pleasantly, but functionally. Historians still debate whether peasants followed the so-called 2 sleeps pattern, one period of early night rest, a midnight wake, and then a second round of slumber until dawn. But for you, it isn't theory. It's just what happens. The body can't ignore the cold for that many hours in a row. And so you rise, quietly, carefully. You look around. Your sister is still curled tight, cloak wrapped around her, like a moth cocoon. Your father has taken over the warmest corner, a pile of blankets and cloaks draped over him like he's asleep under laundry. You envy his snoring. Time for layered nightwear strategy. You shuffle to the wall where extra garments hang, stiff, cold, and more likely to slap you in the face than comfort you. Still, you gather what you can. An old linen shift that once belonged to your aunt, a patched hood with only one ear flap, and a pair of mittens made from two different animals. You're pretty sure one used to be part of a dog. You pull the shift over your existing clothes, not exactly designed for layering, but you make it work. Next to the hood, threadbare, itchy, and blessedly warm once it settles over your ears. Modern folks might scoff at sleeping in a hood, but in your world, a coif, cap, or even a rag tied around your head is as normal as a blanket. In fact, some people sleep with two, not for fashion, for survival. Your ears are delicate, and frost is not polite. You remember the village priest once warning that the devil enters through the ears when they grow too cold. You don't believe him, but you do believe in not waking up with ears like frozen meat. The mittens are next. They're stiff at first, but warm quickly, trapping the little heat your hands have managed to produce. You flex your fingers inside them, grateful even for the scratch of coarse fur. You're not trying to look presentable. You're trying to wake up in the morning with your fingers. Finally, the feet. You reach for the trick your mother taught you. Heated stones. By the hearth, two small rocks sit nestled in the ashes. You nudge them with a stick. Warm, perfect. You wrap them in bits of cloth and nestle them against your feet inside the bed. Instant heaven. Like finding a bit of summer that got lost and buried in the fire. Quirky tidbit. Peasants used heated stones, or even bricks, as nighttime foot warmers long before anyone thought to invent fancy bed warming pans. You've even heard of someone wrapping a baked potato in linen and sleeping with it under the covers. In the morning, breakfast, your toes slowly regain feeling, tingling with that painful, not painful sting that means the blood is coming back. You wince but stay still. Better a little hurt than a lot frozen. The rest of the cottage is silent, just the soft crackle of the rekindled fire, the deep breathing of your sleeping family, and the distant moan of the wind somewhere in the eaves. You lie back down, pulling the extra shift around your knees and tugging the hood tighter. This time, you sleep on your side, with the stone pressed to your feet, and your mittened hands tucked under your chin. You feel ridiculous, like a bundle of rags come to life. But for the first time tonight, you also feel almost comfortable. Just before sleep claims you again, your mind wanders. You think about how ridiculous this all is, that you have to layer yourself like a roast, burn cow dung for warmth, and pray to small rocks and old wool. But you also know that every layer you add is a small victory. Every extra hood, every midden, every heated stone is a rebellion against the cold. Because the winter doesn't want you to sleep. It wants you to suffer. And yet, here you are, wrapped like a burrito in borrowed fabric and personal defiance. You smile, just a little, and let your eyes close. And this time, the sleep comes easier. You wake to the faint sound of sizzling, not sharp or urgent, just a gentle hiss, 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 like a whisper from the hearth. You blink blearily and sit up slowly. The shift you threw on during the night, clinging to your back with that uniquely awful mix of sweat and cold. You've slept through the second portion of the night, which means the fire's almost out, but not quite. That sound? It's the haybox cooking setup, an invention, as clever as it is cozy. You stretch your arms and crawl toward the hearth. Nestled near the side stones is a small covered pot, tightly wrapped in old rags and nestled in dried hay. No, not for storage, for cooking. Well, finishing cooking. You unwrap the bundle carefully, letting out a little steam and a smell that surprises you. It's almost good barley, a turnip chunk, a piece of salted meat the size of your thumb. Everything boiled together, hours ago, and packed in hot, then wrapped and insulated in hay to keep cooking while you sleep. The result? Warmish stew. Not hot, not gourmet, but not raw either. Which, in a peasant's winter kitchen, is a marvel. Mainstream fact: haybox cooking was a form of heat retention cooking, used in many poor households. Heat up food once, then keep it cooking in a tight bundle of insulation. You've seen it done with hay, wool, even wrapped in cloaks. When fuel is scarce, every ember counts. You sip from a wooden spoon and hum softly. It's not delicious, but it's warm. And warm is the only flavor that matters right now. You hear a stirring behind you. Your father, groaning and sitting up, pulling his cloak tighter around his shoulders, like he's afraid it'll escape in the night. Is there anything hot? He asks. You hand him the pot and he nods, grumbling a blessing without quite waking up. Your sister stirs too, rubbing her eyes and reaching out blindly for the same breakfast you already had. While they eat, you rise and grab the other treasure of this frigid morning, a hearthstone. It's a small flat rock, warmed overnight in the ashes, now radiating a slow, comforting heat. You take it in both mittened hands and press it against your stomach, sighing like you've just slipped into a hot bath. It's glorious. Like holding the sun, if the sun had a layer of soot and didn't smell like burned onion. You walk slowly toward the bench near the shuttered window and sit, holding the stone close, breathing in its faint warmth. In winter, the fire isn't just for light or food. It's your pharmacy, your kitchen, your companion. Quirky detail. Some families swore by warming stones for curing stomach cramps, childbirth pain, even toothaches. There was a superstition in your village that if you pressed a hot hearth stone to your chest and whispered your troubles, it would bake them out. You're not sure it works, but you whisper anyway, quietly, just in case. Don't freeze today, you murmur to it with a crooked smile. As the cottage stirs to life, your mother begins unwrapping last night's herbs. The dried bundle hangs by the hearth, brittle and brown now, but it still has a scent sweet and earthy. She crumbles a bit of sage into a cloth and sets it near the fire to warm the air, an old tradition that supposedly keeps sickness away. You wrap the stone in your apron and carry it across the room. With a gentle hand, you tuck it beneath your sister's feet. as she curls up on the straw mat. She gasps, then laughs. "It's hot," she says, delighted. "Good," you reply. "Then it's working." Historians still argue whether such homemade heating tricks were widespread or simply regional adaptations passed from mouth to mouth. But here, they're gospel. You grew up with them. You've used them every winter, and without them, there wouldn't be a spring. Outside a crow caws once, hoarse and loud. You move toward the shutter and lift the latch. The outside world greets you with a wall of white. Snow fell during the last part of the night. Not a storm, but enough to blanket the ground in softness. Enough to slow your chores. Enough to steal your breath for a second with its brightness. You close the shutter again and secure it tight. Today's work will wait a bit, until you're warm enough, until you've gathered your courage, and maybe your other metin, which seems to have crawled into the straw during the night. You bend down, rummaging quietly. The straw rustles and shifts. You find your mitten at last, and something else. A stone, small and round, slightly warm. One of the older, fire-warmed ones from the day before, still holding just a whisper of heat. You grin. You pocket it and tell yourself it's for backup. But really, it's for your soul. Because sometimes, just knowing there's a little warmth left somewhere makes all the difference. You gather your layers, take one more sip of the haybox stew, and stretch again. There's a lot to do today. Firewood to scavenge, snow to clear, thatch to patch. But for the moment, you sit in the dim glow of the hearth, stone against your belly, feeling like, despite everything, you might just be okay. For now, the light sneaks in under the shutters now, weak, slanted, and slightly golden. Morning has officially arrived, though you'd hardly know by the chill still sitting heavy in the air. You rise from your bench, the warmth of the hearth stone fading slowly against your chest, and your joints reminding you that surviving the night doesn't mean you won't limp through the day. Your family is stirring too, one by one, like a slow-moving herd of bundled-up hedgehogs. Your father mutters something about chopping more wood. Your sister stares into the fire, like she's trying to will it to grow. And your mother? She's already preparing a little bundle of herbs and rags, the ones she'll tuck into the children's cloaks before they go out. Lavender and juniper for luck, rosemary for health, and maybe just a bit of mint because it's all she has left. But today is not just about chores. It's about routine, the invisible glue that holds your little household together when the wind threatens to blow everything apart. And part of that routine, the midnight to dawn checkup circuit. You know the steps. You've done them since you were old enough to walk without falling into the hearth. You shuffle around the cottage, doing small things that make a big difference. You check the fire, still going, barely, good. You check the walls, no new cracks, just the old familiar ones, stuffed with rags. You check the straw mattress, still damp in the corner. Not much you can do about that. And then you check the children. There are 3 sleeping in the far corner. Your sister, your cousin, and little Bird, who technically belongs to the neighbors, but has been sleeping here for a week because their cottage roof is leaking again. You move quietly among them. adjusting cloaks, nudging limbs back under blankets, tucking a warmed stone between two sets of feet. They murmur in their sleep, but none of them wake. That's the goal. If they stay warm, they'll stay still, and still means safe. Mainstream historical fact: medieval families often rose in the middle of the night, not out of choice, but necessity. Fires needed tending, livestock needed checking, blankets needed adjusting, children needed monitoring. There were no baby monitors, no thermostats. Just your hands, your eyes, and your instincts. You return to the hearth and crouch beside it, letting the heat wrap around your knees. Outside, the wind has quieted, but not gone. You hear it now as a low hum, waving through the cracks in the eaves, brushing against the shutters, like a sleepy animal trying to find its way in. Your mother hands you a boiled cloth bundle. "Check the lintel," she says softly. You nod and cross the room to the door. The lintel, that low wooden beam just above the threshold, is where your family places charms for safety. A little bag of ashes, a sliver of bone, a feather from the churchyard goose. Things that mean nothing to outsiders, and everything to you. You reach up, touch the lintel, and tuck the new cloth beside the others, warmed with breath, dusted with sage. It's not just about superstition, it's about control. In a world where the cold can steal your life in your sleep, doing anything that feels protective is worth doing. Quirky detail: some villages believe that placing warm cloth at the lintel will confuse evil spirits who are distracted by the warmth and pause before entering. It sounds ridiculous, but then again, you've stared at that same doorway during long winter nights and wondered what exactly might be out there waiting. As you lower your arm, you glance through a crack in the shutter. The village is beginning to stir. A flicker of smoke here, a glimmer of firelight there. You see Ellen trudging through the snow, her boots covered in rags, carrying a bundle of something that could be firewood or could be a cat. With Ellen, it's always a toss-up. A bell rings faintly in the distance. The church, one clang, then another. Not a call to prayer, not today. Just a reminder you made it through another night. And now you begin again. Inside, your cousin stirs. He's whimpering. A bad dream, maybe. Or cold feet. You cross over, kneel beside him, and gently shake his shoulder. "Morning," you whisper. He blinks at you. "Is it over?" You smile. "This night, yes. The cold? Not yet." He nods and tucks himself deeper into the blanket. You move to your corner and begin gathering your chores list. Mentally, what needs fixing? What needs hauling? What can wait until the sun rises higher and the frost melts just enough to loosen the earth? The mid-morning shift begins. Your mother grates a bit of old root into the pot. Your father stretches his arms, his shoulders cracking like timber under weight. And you? You reach once more for the hearthstones. They're cooling now, but still warm enough to tuck into your sleeves as you prepare to go outside. The fire pops softly. Someone laughs. You don't remember the joke. It doesn't matter, because these tiny rituals, these early morning rounds, these hushed check-ins, and shared glances, this is what holds you together. Winter may own the air, the ground, and sometimes your breath. but your family still owns the fire. The sun climbs, slow and uncertain, casting a cold light over the thatched rooftops of your village. It doesn't warm anything, it just illuminates the cold, making the frost on your doorstep shimmer like someone spilled a bag of crushed glass. You pull your cloak tighter, slip one of the fading hearthstones into your pocket, and head outside to face the morning. Your breath clouds instantly. Every step crunches, your boots snapping frozen mud like crackers underfoot. But your mind is somewhere else, on your youngest sibling, still curled up back inside, coughing lightly in her sleep. Children suffer the cold worst of all. The grown-ups may grumble and limp and groan, but they've learned to adapt. They know when to move, when to layer, when to drink something bitter and hope for the best. Children, though, they don't have those instincts yet. Their fingers go purple too fast. Their lips chap, their bones ache, and they don't know why. And that terrifies you. You head toward the woodshed, or what used to be a woodshed, and is now mostly just a leaning frame with a few damp logs and a whole lot of spiders. You find a couple of usable pieces near the back. They're half frozen, heavy, and smell like rot, but they'll burn once they dry near the hearth. As you hold the logs back, your thoughts wander to how children in your village survive these long, brutal winters. The first rule: never let them sleep alone. No matter how much space you have or don't have, kids are tucked in together, usually between two warm bodies. Sometimes it's parents, sometimes older siblings. You once spent a winter sleeping beside your cousin and two neighbor kids under a single oxhide blanket. You couldn't move, but you also didn't freeze, so that's a win. Inside the house again, you stomp the snow from your boots and glance over to see your little sister. Awake now, nose red hair tangled like straw. She gives you a tiny wave, still buried beneath the blanket. You nod. Fire's coming back. Hold tight. Mainstream historical fact: many peasant households assigned specific roles to children during winter, not just chores, but warming duties. A child might be asked to sleep beside a sick relative to share body heat, or to hold a hot stone against someone's chest. Children were part of the heating system, like little fidgety radiators. Your sister sneezes. You hand her a bit of cloth to wipe her nose and glance toward the hanging herbs. You pluck a pinch of dried marjoram and tame what's left of it, and crumble it into a small bowl of water set near the fire. The steam rises faintly, scented and weak, but better than nothing. She leans toward it like a kitten to a warm lap. Some families rub goose fat into their children's feet before bed, then wrap them in linen. Yours did that last week. The fat still lingers in the house. Its smell is memorable, but her toes didn't freeze, so no one's complaining. You pull her into your lap now, her tiny body half limp, half bony, and nestle a warmed stone against her belly. She sighs and clutches it like a doll. You hum to her softly, something your mother used to sing to you before you were the one keeping the fire going. There's a saying in your village: children who cry warm live long. It means that if a child has enough strength to fuss, squirm, or complain, they're probably not in immediate danger. The quiet ones, the ones who just lie still, they're the ones to watch. Your sister fusses now. She doesn't like the taste of the herb steam. Good. That means her body still cares. You remember your neighbor's boy, Edric. He was 8. One night he went quiet, just curled up and didn't say a word. By morning, he was ice cold. The healer said it was lung rot. Others said it was just a cold. But no one says anything at all when they pass the patch of bare ground by the chapel where he's buried. So you talk to your sister constantly. You ask if she's warm. You ask if her fingers move. You ask if she wants to sing. You let her draw patterns on the ash-covered hearthstone with a stick. You even pretend her sneezes are spells that ward off frost sprites. She laughs. Quirky tidbit. In some parts of the countryside, it's believed that drawing circles or runes in the ashes around a sleeping child would protect them from winter spirits. Your aunt once etched a whole alphabet in the hearth ash before bed, saying it would confuse the demons. You don't know if it worked, but you slept well that night. You remember your own winters as a child, how every morning your mother checked your feet first. She'd press a finger against your toes and ask, "Can you feel this?" Then your ears, then your hands. And if you flinched, she'd smile. "Still yours," she'd say, "for now." You check your sister's hands now, just like that. She flinches. Good. You wrap her back up and place her near the fire with the other kids. They're all awake now, yawning and stretching like little cats, huddled close, passing the stone from one to the next. Children don't talk about the cold like adults do. They don't curse it. They don't analyze it. They endure it quietly until they're told it's spring. And that's why you watch them, tend to them, keep them warm. Not just with fire and cloaks and stones, but with laughter, with songs, with silly games and dumb jokes and bedtime rhymes that don't make sense, but still make them giggle. Because when you're small and the world outside is frozen solid, joy is a kind of insulation too. Later in the day, when the sun is highest, though still not warm, you venture outside again. The wind has softened to a breeze, and a few brave chickens peck nervously at the frozen earth. Their feathers are puffed out like proud old men in thick coats, each squawk sounding more like a complaint than a call. You check the coop. The straw is damp. One egg, still warm. That means the hen laid it not long ago. You pick it up gently and cradle it like a treasure. Because it is, back inside, you return to the hearth, where the egg is cracked gently into a bowl and whisked with a pinch of dried herbs and the last of the sour goat milk. It's not a feast, it's a remedy, because this week has been full of sniffles and coughs and whispers you don't say in front of the children. And now it's time to deal with winter's other threat, illness. The cold doesn't just freeze fingers, it steals breath, it settles into the chest, dragging down the strong and the frail alike. And in a world where medicine is more hope than help, you do what peasants have always done. Turn to the land, the fire, and old stories. You reach into a cloth pouch filled with dried remedies, crumbled mint, a few moldy rose hips, some willow bark. You've forgotten what most of them are supposed to do. You just remember who gave them to you. "This one's for fevers," said your aunt. handing you a bundle of sharp-smelling green leaves last autumn. Or maybe for dreams. Don't use too much or too little. Clear as ice. Mainstream fact: peasant medicine in medieval times was a blend of herbalism, superstition, and guesswork. While monasteries held the real recipes, common folk relied on folk knowledge, passed from mother to daughter, neighbor to neighbor. Willow bark for pain, honey for cuts, moldy bread for infected wounds. No one really knew why these things sometimes worked, but they sometimes did. You soak the herbs in hot water, watching the steam swirl. The smell is earthy, bitter, and strangely comforting. Your sister sits nearby, face flushed. Her cough has settled into a low rattle in her chest. Nothing dangerous yet, but you've learned to be cautious. Winter is a thief that starts by stealing warmth, then tries for lungs next. You hand her the cup. It's not sweet, you warn. She sips, winces, then gives you that brave little nod of hers. She's used to the taste of survival. Your mother is in the corner, grinding something with a smooth rock. It might be dried nettle, or it might be dirt. In winter, sometimes the difference is more poetic than practical. She adds it to a mixture of lard and ash, yes, ash, and applies it to your brother's leg, where frost has turned a bruise the color of wine. He hisses, but she blows on it gently. This'll draw the pain out, she says, or push it further in. Again, nobody knows, quirky practice. Some households believe that wrapping a red cloth around a sick child's chest will confuse the sickness and force it to leave. Others hang garlic from the rafters, not for food, but to frighten off the creeping chill. You've got garlic too. It doesn't work, but it smells like action. You remember the old woman who lived at the edge of the woods, Agnes the Bitter, everyone called her. She brewed teas from mushrooms and bark, spoke to the fire, and once claimed she cured the fever by placing a hot stone under the patient's bed and whispering their name backward 3 times. You tried it once. You whispered wrong and nearly caught your blanket on fire. Still, the boy got better. Coincidence? Probably. But you added the trick to your list anyway. Historians still argue whether these folk remedies were sheer nonsense or if there was genuine healing power in their ingredients. Some suggest that psychological comfort played a bigger role than we credit today. You nod as you watch your sister sip her tea. Comfort matters. Belief matters. Sometimes they matter more than ingredients. You settle beside her, stroke her hair back from her forehead. Still warm, but not burning. Good. You press a hand to your own chest. The cough you had 2 nights ago seems to be fading. You hope it stays that way. You can't afford to get sick. Not now, not ever. But especially not when firewood is running low. And your best axe cracked yesterday. You glance toward the herbs again. Almost out. You'll need to trade for more soon. Maybe offer a few eggs. Or spin some thread. Or promise to help fix a roof when the snow melts. Barter is its own language. Sickness its own currency. You sigh, tuck the last of the herbs back into the pouch, and close it with a nut that's half prayer. The light is fading again already. The sun never lingers long in winter. You blink, tired, and rise to stir the fire. The smoke climbs upward, mixing with the scent of boiled herbs, hot stone, and old wool. Your sister has dozed off now, breathing steadier. The red cloth lies across her chest, just like it's supposed to. Her skin is flushed but not clammy. You lean back, let your head rest against the cold wall, and think of all the tiny, odd things you've done just to make it through this season. You've rubbed soot on blisters, drunk broth made from moss and bone, danced around the fire with a fever because someone said it would make the bad spirits dizzy. You've believed in everything because something had to work. And maybe that's what medicine really is. In the harshest winters, a little warmth, a little hope, and someone willing to hold your hand until the fire burns high again. There's a knock at the door, not a loud one, just 3 soft taps, spaced wide apart, like the wind forgot how to knock and tried anyway. You glance toward your father. He nods once, already pulling on his cloak. You open the door slowly. The cold slips in immediately, curling around your ankles, like a snake with frozen breath. Outside stands Wimund, your neighbor, a man built like a tree stump, and just about as expressive. He's wrapped in a cloak that once was black, but now just looks like wet bark. And slung over one shoulder is the village cloak. Ah, so it's your turn. The village cloak is exactly what it sounds like. A massive, patched, fur-lined beast of a garment, passed between households. When someone falls ill, or the cold hits especially hard, no one owns it, everyone owes it. It started years ago, after an old man nearly died of frost, in his sleep. The village tailor made the first patch, then someone added rabbit fur, then someone stitched on bits of wool. It grew, layer by mismatched layer, until it looked less like clothing and more like a quilt with a neck hole. But it works. Wyman grunts, sets it in your arms, then turns and walks away without a word. That's how this transaction goes. No thanks, no guilt, just quiet agreement. When someone needs warmth, you give it. You bring the cloak inside, already feeling the heat it holds, the borrowed warmth of 10 other bodies, soaked into the stitching like invisible fingerprints. You carry it to your sister and wrap it gently around her shoulders. She shifts a little, smiles in her sleep. And there it is, that rare flicker of peace that only comes when warmth is earned, not expected. Mainstream fact: shared community items like cloaks, pots, and tools were common in poor medieval villages. With so few possessions and so many needs, survival often depended on communal generosity, an unspoken rotation of necessity. You've worn the cloak before, last winter, when you were down with fever and your hands were so cold they couldn't hold a spoon. You remember the feel of it. Heavy, scratchy, but safe. Like a thundercloud, stitched from every act of kindness in the village. You sit by the hearth, resting your head in your hands. You're tired, not from chores, not even from cold, but from being vigilant. The kind of tired that lives in the bones. Because warmth, in this world, is a currency, and like all currencies, it's spent sparingly and traded carefully. You've seen arguments break out over cloaks, fights over firewood, silent grudges because someone used the last of the dried moss that others had hidden for their feet. And yet, somehow, the village always circles back to sharing. Your neighbor's son once walked an hour through snow just to bring your family a handful of boiled oats and a strip of salted meat when your stores ran out. He didn't say why, he didn't need to. His father had worn the cloak 2 weeks before. It's always like that. Give, receive, survive. You sit beside your sister and press your hand against the cloak now. It's warm, not just from the fire, but from something deeper. A kind of weight that isn't heavy. A kind of trust, quirky tradition. Some families stitch little scraps into shared garments, symbols or initials, tiny charms for health or dreams. Inside the village cloak, there's a patch shaped like a flower, one like a goat's ear, even one with stitched letters spelling out "Not yet winter." You chuckle softly when you see that one. You know who did it. Ellen? Of course. Historians still argue whether these communal items were truly shared as altruism or enforced through guilt and pressure. But you know better. When you're that cold, pride becomes irrelevant. You wrap yourself in whatever keeps you breathing. Your father sits down beside you, his face lit by the fire. "She'll be all right," he says simply. You nod. Because of the cloak? Because of the people. You sit together in silence for a while. You feed the fire another stick of wood. It hisses, flares, then calms. You can hear other households now. One across the lane chopping wood. Another leading a pig around to the back for warmth. You swear you hear singing. Or maybe just humming. Tomorrow, the cloak goes to the carpenter's wife. Her baby was born a month early and cries all night from the cold. No one's going to argue. That's just how it is. But tonight, it's yours. And tonight, your sister sleeps without shivering. You look down at the patchwork layers, the threadbare pieces, the wild combination of colors and fabrics. You run your hand across it. It's not beautiful, but it's sacred. You wake early the next morning, not from cold, not from coughing, but from bells. Faint at first, distant and ghost-like, but unmistakable. The sound drifts through the heavy morning fog, climbing over the frost-covered rooftops, slipping between shutter cracks, and seeping into your ears like soft thunder. Clang. Pause, clang again and again, steady and slow. You sit up, brushing straw from your cloak, still wrapped tight in the heat of the village garment. Your sister is still sleeping beside you, mouth slightly open, her breath even, and her hands curled beneath her cheek. She didn't stir at all. You rise and move toward the shutter, careful not to wake her. You lift the wooden latch and push the panel open, just a crack. The air rushes in, cold and sharp, but the sound becomes clearer. The church bells are ringing through the fog. In summer, bells mean joy, a marriage, a feast, a returning traveler. But in winter, they're more often a reminder. Someone has made it through the night, or someone hasn't. You hold your breath. One bell, two, a long pause, then another. That pause, that's what chills you. Not the weather, not the frost, but the unknown that follows silence. You close the shutter and lean against it. It's wet with condensation, cold seeping into your back. You let it sit there a moment. You need to feel it, need to remember that. You're still alive and alert, and not dulled like a log in the hearth. Because winter, more than anything, dulls the edges of your senses. Every day feels the same. Gray sky, frozen breath, the ache of limbs that move only when commanded. But the bells cut through the haze. They remind you, time is still passing. People are still breathing. Or not. The world is still spinning, even if your days feel stuck in place. You begin your morning rounds quietly. Fire first. Always the fire. It's nearly dead, of course. Just two weak coals glowing like eyes in a sea of ash. You kneel at a dung brick and blow gently. The spark answers. You breathe easier. Mainstream fact: church bells weren't just religious signals, they were the heartbeat of medieval communities. They marked the hours, warned of danger, announced births, deaths, and sometimes weather shifts. In cold months, a special early morning bell often signaled survival, that the watchman had lived through the night and the village was still whole. You rise and begin checking the usual spots: the wall cracks, the shutter latches, the straw pile for leaks. Then you pull on your boots and step outside. The fog is thick today. You can barely see the fence that marks the path to the well. Everything is cloaked in silver: trees, rooftops, wagons, even the sheep in the distance, standing frozen like ghosts. You walk slowly, carefully. The mud beneath your feet is stiff with ice, slippery in places, and your breath makes little clouds that hang in the airs longer than they should. As you pass the neighboring house, you see Ellen again. She's wrapping a blanket around her chickens. Yes, the chickens. She does this every time the fog comes in thick. Swearing it confuses their souls. You smile and wave. She nods once, serious, then shuffles back inside. Then the bell sounds again. Clang, clang, clang. 3 times now. This time closer, more certain. It's not a funeral bell. It's the resilience bell. You know this because the rhythm is different, slower, deeper, spaced out, so it echoes through the fog like a pulse. It means we made it. It means the priest is alive. The fire was kept lit. The bread didn't freeze. The roof held. You stand still in the road, boots planted in the ice, listening, because for a brief moment everything pauses. Even the birds, even the fear. Just silence between the strikes of bronze. You close your eyes and let the sound fill your chest. Quirky tradition. Some villagers believe that fog traps sound, holding it in place to keep the warmth from escaping. So when the bells ring during fog, it's seen as double luck: warmth of sound, warmth of soul. The baker once swore his bread rose better on foggy mornings with bells ringing. You don't know if it's true, but you always eat your crusts on those days, just in case. You turn back toward home, the cloak flapping behind you like a banner. As you approach your door, you see the smoke curling from your chimney, slow and steady. You see the frost melting slightly around your threshold. You see footprints in the ice. Yours, your father's, your sister's. And you think, this is the mark of survival. Inside, your sister has woken. She's sitting upright, cloak still wrapped tight, eyes clearer than they've been in days. She smiles at you as you enter. I heard it, she says. The bell? You ask. She nods. 3 times. You smile. That means we're still here. She grins, then asks, can we ring one too? You laugh, shake your head. Only the priest gets to do that. She shrugs. I'd still like to. You pause. Then you take the old tin ladle from the hearth, hand her a spoon, and tap the ladle gently with it. Think. Your turn, you say. She taps. Ting. The sound is small, soft, barely echoes, but you both hear it, and somehow, in that moment, you feel warmer than the fire could ever make you. The sky turns pale again, and with it comes the dreaded moment you have to leave the house. The fire is burning, your sister is bundled in the village cloak, your mother is humming as she stirs a pot of what might be soup or just hopeful water. All of it says, stay here, but your boots say otherwise. Because you're the one who has to walk to the commons today, it's your family's turn to fetch kindling, share salt, and, if luck is on your side, barter for something warmer than promises. You wrap your own ragged cloak tight, tuck a hot stone into the inside of your tunic, and brace yourself. Your father hands you a dull hatchet, useless for real chopping, but sharp enough to splinter ice-frozen branches from fallen logs. He doesn't say, be careful. He doesn't need to. He just nods. You nod back. The door opens, and the cold doesn't slap. It sinks into your mouth, your ears, your chest. It pulls at your lungs, like a thief reaching for your breath. You tug your hood down, tighter, and start walking. The path to the commons is lined with twisted trees, leafless and skeletal, their arms reaching out like they're pleading for spring. Your boots crunch over frozen dirt, then slip, just slightly, on a patch of ice. You steady yourself, one foot, then the other. At the bend near the well, you see a familiar shape ahead. Morna, the weaver's daughter, pulling a sled loaded with bundles. You catch up slowly. She nods at you, face wrapped in a scarf so thick she looks like she has no mouth. Cold, she says, her voice muffled. You grin. I hadn't noticed. She snorts. Could be a laugh, could be frost. Together you walk the rest of the way in silence. The commons are half covered in snow, with footprints crisscrossing, like a frantic spider's web. There's a pile of cut branches in the center, community kindling. Everyone brings what they can, takes what they need. You add your few sticks to the pile. You take 3 back. That's how it works. Mainstream historical fact. Shared resource piles were common in tight-knit medieval villages. Whether it was firewood, salt, or food scraps, the idea was simple. If everyone gave when they could, everyone survived when they couldn't. A woman across the field offers a pot of bone broth in exchange for cloth. You don't have any cloth, but you do have 2 eggs and a small coil of thread spun by your sister last week. You trade not because you need broth today, but because you might tomorrow. That's how it always is in winter. You barter with time. You glance around and notice a small crowd. Near the smithy, people gathered around a crate. You shuffle closer and see it. Someone has brought apples. Shrunken, bruised, speckled with frost, but apples. You can smell them before you see them. Sharp, sweet, real. You consider trading. You don't. Not yet. Quirky bit of folklore. Your village believes the first apple of winter is lucky, but only if it's shared. Whoever tries to eat one alone gets stomach cramps. That might just be a peasant explanation for bad fruit. Or maybe not. Either way, you're not risking it. You spot an older man warming his hands by a pile of rocks that someone's turned into a makeshift hearth. A girl is toasting bread over it. Real bread, probably saved since the first frost. She breaks off a chunk and gives it to a boy with red ears and no gloves. No one speaks much out here. The cold steals words, but every action is loud. A shared crust, a wrapped scarf, a nod when someone hands over more than they needed to. You remember something your grandmother said. Winter is a teacher. She doesn't use books, just silence and frost. You're learning every day. You gather your bundles and head back with Mona. Her sled creaks, the trees moan, somewhere a crow caws, sharp and lonely. When you reach the bend again, she stops. Here, she says, digging into her sled. She pulls out a scrap of rabbit fur, small, torn at one end. She presses it into your palm. It's for your sister. You said her cough was worse. You stare at it. You didn't ask for this. You didn't even say anything today. Thanks, you say softly. She shrugs. Better she has it than the snow. You part ways at the fork. She goes left, toward the weaver's hut. You go right, toward home. The sky has grown even paler. The sun is just a ghost behind the clouds, hanging there like an afterthought. But your hands feel warmer now. Back at your cottage, your sister is awake again, still wrapped in the cloak, still pink in the cheeks, thank the saints. You hand her the rabbit fur. She touches it gently, like it's made of gold. Then she tucks it against her neck and leans into the warmth of the hearth without a word. You sit beside her, add your sticks to the fire, and sip the broth from your trade. It tastes like roots and salt and someone else's generosity. Outside, the wind picks up again. You hear it pushing against the shutters. But this time, you don't shiver. You've walked in it, bartered in it, shared in it. The wind may knock, but it doesn't get in. The sky begins to dim. Again, it's barely afternoon, but the light already leans sideways, stretching long, sleepy shadows across the frost-bitten yard. You've just finished mending the edge of your sister's sleeve with a bit of scavenged thread, your fingers clumsy from cold but steady from practice. Inside, the hearth is alive, not roaring but steady, the way a good fire should be in winter. You've learned not to aim for warmth that burns, only warmth that lingers. Your mother hums softly as she folds spare scraps into tight little bundles. Fire starting kits. She tucks them into a sack beneath the bench. You know she's counting the days ahead, counting wood, counting food, counting hours. Between now and spring, everyone counts something. In winter, you're counting something too. Icicles. From the window, you watch them drip, slow, rhythmic, like a ticking clock made of melting glass. One drop falls, then another. The sun barely grazes them, but it's enough. The edge of the deep freeze has finally begun to bend. You walk outside with your sister, her rabbit fur tucked snugly around her neck, her cheeks still pink, but no longer flushed with fever. She holds your hand tightly, her steps slow in the packed snow. And then, together, you just listen. The air is quiet, still cold, still sharp, but there's something different now, a kind of lightness to it, a softness on the wind that wasn't there before. You hear it in the trees, branches creaking less, whispering more. You feel it in the ground. Hard, yes, but not frozen solid. There's 5 in it, a hint of thaw, a promise, and there it is, hope. You kneel beside your sister, point to the edge of the roof where the icicles hang. "Look," you whisper. She squints, sees it, one long shard, glistening like a blade, and at its tip, a single droplet swaying, then falling. "Spring," she says, eyes wide. You smile. "Not yet." But closer. Mainstream fact: in many peasant calendars, the first visible melt, whether it was icicles dripping, snow softening, or trees showing buds, was marked as a holy sign. Some villagers lit candles on that day. Others buried the last of their winter herbs beneath the first patch of thawed dirt, hoping it would bless the ground. Your family? You just watch. Because after weeks of holding your breath, of coughing and counting firewood, like prayers, the first drip of an icicle is the sound of the world exhaling. You and your sister head back inside. The wind doesn't bite as hard this time. The sun, weak as it is, follows you back to the doorstep. Your father is sitting at the table, sharpening a knife with slow, patient strokes. Not for defense, for carving pegs, new pegs for shoes, because soon enough the snow will turn to mud, and everything made of wood will need fixing. It's always one season ahead in his mind. That's how he stays calm, by preparing for the next storm while standing in this one. You set the kettle on. The fire hisses in reply. A little steam rises, scented faintly with herbs and soot. Your mother leans over, adds a sprig of something brown and brittle, says nothing, smiles. You wrap your sister in her own cloak, just hers this time, not the village one, and feel proud that she no longer needs the borrowed warmth. You fold the patchwork cloak gently and place it by the door. Tomorrow you'll pass it along again, because someone else needs it now. Historians still argue whether medieval peasants truly understood the science of the seasons, or if they simply reacted to what they saw. But you know it doesn't matter. When icicles drip, when snow softens, when the first green blade pokes up through the dirt, it means something, whether you can explain it or not. You sit beside the fire, your sister's head on your shoulder. The others speak softly around you. No one rushes, no one scrambles. The worst is not over, not yet. But you made it through the darkest stretch. The endless nights, the sickness, the silence. You made it through the coldest hours, one stick at a time, one blanket, one footstep, one whispered charm, one shared cloak, one good joke, one crackling ember. The kettle begins to sing. The fire flares briefly and settles. Outside, another droplet falls. Spring will come. You just have to last a little longer now, as the firelight dances gently across the walls and the world outside darkens once more. You feel your body growing heavier, your breath slower, your thoughts softer. There's no more need to move, no more chores for now. The wood is stacked, the hearth is glowing. The night will be cold again, but not unfamiliar, not frightening. You know the sounds by now. The creak of beams, the shuffle of feet wrapped in wool, the quiet sighs of children settling into their nests of straw and blankets. These sounds no longer startle you. They soothe you, remind you that others are here too, breathing in rhythm, dreaming side by side. The fire doesn't roar anymore, it hums, a low golden whisper that wraps around your legs like a cat. curling tighter the longer you sit. You lean back, your shoulders loosen, your eyelids droop. Outside, the wind has faded into a gentle hush, brushing across the thatch like a lullaby. The world is still cold, but tonight it feels quieter, softer, as though winter too is tired.